She's very lucky to have found you as a therapist, that you could actually be there with her, not intellectualize it, not talk about it, but feel it and be there together. It's a powerful, sensitive, emotional connection that you had there being with her, in touch with her emotions, but also with your own feelings. And it seemed like you didn't really need to have to say too much. You both felt it. It was just there.
Welcome to the A Different Kind of Psychiatry podcast, brought to you by the ACO. I'm Dr. Chris Burritt. Each episode features a narrated article, case presentation, or interview or discussion with one or more of our doctors who practice a different kind of psychiatry. We're interested in your questions and comments, and I would love to hear your feedback. Send an email to aco@orgonomy.org. The best way to help the American College of Ergonomy spread its knowledge is by letting others know about us. If you enjoy the podcast, we'd appreciate you leaving a rating and review. If you're interested in attending one of our webinar presentations, you can meet the doctors and join in on the discussion afterwards. If you're interested in training with the ACO, you can learn more about the medical orgone therapy or social ergonomy training programs. You can connect with us and learn more at orgonomy.org. This episode features the audio from the webinar Pets, a Life-Saving Connection, presented by Dr. Susan Marcel and hosted by Dr. Dee Apple. Listen in to hear a compelling story about Dr. Marcel's patient Anne, who is anxious, depressed, and suicidal, and an interesting and moving discussion about pets and how they affect us emotionally.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Dee Apple. Thank you for joining us for the ACO's A Different Kind of Psychiatry case presentation series. I'm very happy to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Susan Marcel, who will be presenting Pets, a Life-Saving Connection, including a description of her treatment of her patient Anne, as well as a very interesting story about mental health and pets. Dr. Marcel is a psychiatrist, board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. She's also a clinical associate at the American College of Ergonomy and is in private practice in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Marcel has published numerous articles in the Journal of Ergonomy. I have to say, I'm curious. I wanted to ask you a question just to start off. How did you choose this patient and this topic for your presentation?
Yeah, well, I've always been curious about my patients who have pets. And they usually have dogs and cats in their home. And over the years, I've just wondered how they have helped my patients. And I had a sense that was true, but I didn't really understand it. I never really went into depth with it. And my patient, Anne, who I'm going to be talking about today, she suffered with a pretty severe depression, and she came in recently for a session. And as you'll hear through this webinar, her pet cat had a profound effect on the course of her life. It changed her life quite dramatically. It was very moving.
It's so interesting that pets can have such a profound effect on our lives like that. How do you understand that? How is it that pets can, if we allow them to, if we are open to it, touch us so deeply emotionally?
Right. So what's known with medical research is that pets reduce stress and anxiety, and they promote relaxation. It lowers the cortisol level in the body, and the purring of a cat and the playfulness of a dog. They reduce anxiety and improve mood. So research shows that. It also, they've measured hormones in the body. When people interact with pets, their oxytocin goes up, which is a hormone of attachment and connection. Serotonin goes up, dopamine goes up, endorphins go up. So that they have an effect on the body to cause calm and happiness, and reduce anxiety and improve mood. one of the other things that's noted is people with pets they report less loneliness, and there's companionship. So pets offer that unconditional love and support and a sense of connection, which is very valuable, especially for older adults or individuals living alone or that are isolated. And this was very true during the COVID-19 pandemic. People with pets actually did better. And pets, especially dogs, they encourage physical activity. So you have to take the dog outside. And so dog owners, in particular, they're more likely to walk every day, which supports mental health. And that reduces symptoms of depression. And then there's structure and purpose in life, as they're taking care of their dog in that way. Pets also, the research shows that people have more of a sense of responsibility and accomplishment when they care for a pet. And there's increased self-worth, especially during difficult times. Pets also have been used to help veterans in the VA system that have PTSD. It's been very helpful. It's also been, pets have been helpful with people with autism and ADHD or dementia. And service animals, animals that are trained to particularly care, be a partner with someone with a medical or a psychiatric condition, that those animals can detect an anxiety attack and maybe fetch medicine or provide some grounding during an anxiety attack. And one of the things that in preparing for this, I found that the American Psychiatric Association did a poll, and 84% of pet owners said that they have had a mostly positive impact on their mental health. And 74% reported improved mental health due to that pet ownership. So there's something going on there that I think is worth looking at. And you'll hear with my patient, Anne, how it had a profound effect on her.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Marcel. That's very informative and very, very interesting too. And I'm not sure why I'm surprised, but it's wonderful to hear there's all this research being done that sort of validates what we know as pet owners about the healthy effect they have on our lives. So thank you.
Right.
I'm also really interested to hear about your patient as well. Can you tell us about her and how things have gone with her?
My patient, Anne, she first came to see me in her early 20s, and she had a pretty severe depression. She was having panic attacks and anxiety, and she suffered with them since her high school years. And she struggled through high school and college. But around age 20, she adopted a very friendly cat, the friendly cat named Kevin, which I thought was a very interesting name. But in our first session, Anne walked into the office. She sat down very quietly, and her eyes were clear. She looked right at me, and she smiled very politely. And I just said, "So what brings you here today?" And she sat very still. She looked at me and she just said, "I've been very depressed and anxious, and I just want to feel better." And she described she said to me that in college, as a college graduate, she was beginning a career as a vocalist. She has a beautiful voice, and she often was involved with the musical arts and theater. She had a family history of depression and anxiety, and she had tried various medication and therapy over the past few years with limited results. So she still had symptoms despite years of treatment. And it affected her work life, her love life, and her self-esteem and overall functioning. She said that despite those symptoms of depression or anxiety, she was able to push through and work in various acting groups. And she was able to develop connections with some colleagues and friends. And she enjoyed singing a great deal. She has a lovely voice. So, and I sensed there was this, a liveliness in her that, and she had this healthy core underneath all of her symptoms. And I genuinely liked her. And she was very sincere in her desire to feel better. So over the next few sessions, the way I worked with her was just getting us to look at together, how is she handling her emotions? So, my impression was that she rarely became outwardly fearful or irritated. Instead, she was often very compliant, very cautious, very polite, sitting across from me. She never really complained about much. about her work or her relationships. And the way I kind of looked at it was that she was acting like a good girl. And she expressed fears of being abandoned by the people she cared about. So she had to behave and just kind of hold it all in. And what struck me was how hard she was on herself. She would often say in session she felt no good. It became evident that that pattern of being hard on herself and feeling no good was actually her anger turned in on herself. And she feared the loss of love and connection with those people that she cared about. So each time I heard her being hard on herself, I would just stop and say, what is that? You know, what would it be like if you weren't hard on yourself and you didn't say that to yourself? And she would pause and consider the question like it was a novel idea, and to not be hard on myself. She'd done this for years. So
Did you like did you feel like that was really starting to sink in as you were saying that to her?
yes, oh yeah, because I kept pointing it out every time she brought that up. I kept pointing it out. So two themes emerged were, one, how not to be hard on herself, and two, how was she able to express her deeper fear of being hurt in her love relationships? So she sometimes thought about suicide, which was a little anxiety provoking for her and for me, but she felt like she could never do that to her family, her boyfriend, or herself. And to lower her anxiety, what she started doing was she would say positive things to herself that were uplifting. And she would do so while hugging her cat, Kevin. And, Kevin would be very sweet and purring. And this gave her a sense of relief and calm. So Kevin was kind of reinforcing that positive pattern that she was doing. And her cat would just purr and give eye contact and rub and affection. And she worked full time at a local pet hotel kennel, and she cared for dogs and cats. And she found that to be a lot of fun and very helpful to her mood and anxiety. She felt more social. She would connect with the dog owners and then some of the staff. And she began saying things to herself like, I am a good person. And she would say this during the session, the smile on her face and the joy in her eyes would just shine, and her anxiety would go away for a while. It was pretty amazing. The animals that she cared for helped bridge the gap, I think, between her and the pet owners, and she began to feel more confident. And she began dating, and she met her boyfriend, and she was able to move into her own apartment. And she started exercising more, eating better, and decluttering her home. So it had a very good effect. These animals had a very good effect on her self-esteem, if you will. She also worked as a dog walker, so she was a busy lady. But every once in a while, her mood would get very depressed and just sink down into this dark hole. And she described it like, quote, it's like having a bad dream. And she would feel disconnected and dark, and that something was really wrong with her.
I have a couple of questions, Dr. Marcel. Um, in Ann's therapy, did you feel like she was starting to connect with her own depression and feeling disconnected while she was being hard on herself?
Exactly. She was making that connection. And I would ask her, so what is that? What would it be like to not think that way, that something's wrong with you, right? And when I would ask that, she would pause and look at me, and in a cautious, calm way, she was quietly, you could tell the wheels were turning, and she was considering that question. And my sense was not to push her, but to just let the answer kind of come up from within her. And she would say, I will think about that.
We haven't talked about this question before, but I just was wondering if did she ever talk about Kevin becoming sensitized to when she was feeling depressed or disconnected and maybe showing up and being there with her, or would she reach out to him? They seemed like they connected a lot when she was feeling down.
I don't know. My guess would be, she never mentioned that to me, but my guess would be Kevin could read her well and know that she needed, lap time or purring or some affection. So there probably was something mutual happening there. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Anne began working at the preschool with 3 to 4-year-olds several years later, and she also as a nanny. And she continued to work in her music and vocalist career, and singing in various shows and expressing all that joy. Singing was really a wonderful expression for her. She could sing out any emotion there. Her relationship with her boyfriend improved. We were able to lower her medication, and she continued to live life as best she could. Sometimes anxiety and depression would creep back, those symptoms, but not as profoundly strong as when she first came to see me. And she oftentimes would say, gosh, I feel this need to be perfect. And that was what would, charge the anxiety up. And being perfect meant she had less of a chance of being abandoned by those she cared about. So that pattern just kept coming back. But she would often reach out to her cat and talk to him, hold him, and she felt this sense of comfort, love, and acceptance. And he was this calming presence for Anne. And there was unconditional love there and affection,
She was clearly getting a lot out of her therapy with you, which is very nice to hear, Dr. Marcel, and also getting a boost of affection and support from Kevin at home. It was nice working together that way. What happened next?
So recently, Anne came in for a session, and she tearfully shared with me that her cat Kevin, he was 14 years old, he got very, very sick, and he died. And she was devastated. She was so sad. And she shared with me, both her mom and her aunt had cats, and they also were very, very supportive of her. But she looked at me, this caught me off guard. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, Dr. Marcel, if it wasn't for my cat, Kevin, I would have killed myself. He helped me through it all. And I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And we just sat there, just letting that kind of hang there. And I was so moved, and she was moved, and she was crying terribly. And we both had tears in our eyes. I mean, it was very sad, just very, very sad.
But I'm so glad she was able to share that with you and take that next step.
Exactly. And what was so clear to me, what her little cat Kevin was giving her love and emotional support and comfort, and that emotional, energetic contact. So she was having contact with me. She trusted me with such a profound statement that she was, without this cat, she would have killed herself. And she trusted me so she could open up to the pain of that and the grief that she was feeling. And it was deeply moving for both of us. I think it was very deeply moving for me as well, because I had just lost my dog a couple months ago. My dog was 16 and died. And I mean, I got it. I understood it. And that kind of emotional contact between us was very essential, I think, for effective therapy for Anne. Yeah.
Not only are you sensitive and open and willing to open your heart up to your patients in appropriate times, but to have lost your own dog and be so sensitized to what that feels like, you could imagine what Anne was going through much better than a lot of people might be able to. She's very lucky to have found you as a therapist, that you could actually be there with her, not intellectualize it, not talk about it, but feel it and be there together. It's a powerful, sensitive, emotional connection that you had there, being with her, in touch with her emotions, but also with your own feelings. And it seemed like you didn't really need to have to say too much. You both felt it. It was just there.
Yep.
And then to find out you had actually had a co-therapist working in Kevin. After Kevin died, did you feel that changed your relationship with Anne?
Yes, I began to appreciate the depth of the depth of love she was capable of sharing, and how vulnerable, she let me in on something so painful, and our connection got deeper and stronger, I think. And I mean, she's grieving, as we all do when we lose pets, but her life was progressing and getting better and better and better. So, there was that emotional, energetic contact that was happening between us and between her and her cat.
You mentioned an interesting phrase there, an important phrase, emotional, energetic contact. Can you describe a little more about what you mean by emotional, energetic contact? There's three parts of the phrase. All three are important and interesting.
Yeah, sure. So, if you ask most physicians and psychiatrists what emotions are, you may get many, many different answers, many of which are mechanistic in nature. So one of my hopes today in telling Anne's story was to introduce this concept of emotional energetic contact. Psychiatrist Dr. Wilhelm Reich discovered orgonomy, and orgonomy is the science of how life functions. And Dr. Reich described emotions in people. He actually measured it with various instruments of emotions moving in people's bodies and the perception of that energy flow and movement in the body. He described it, for example, as pulsation, like, expanding and contracting, and that it really is a biological phenomenon. It's not just some intellectual thing that happens. There's really something going on throughout the body. And in nature, we see spontaneous movement of expansion and contraction. For example, like when we feel happy, we expand, we smile, we reach out, in our bodies, maybe reach out to a loved one. When we're sad, we might withdraw and feel movements of contraction and pull away from somebody. And all living things pulsate. And Dr. Reich wrote about this and measured this, and he wrote about it in the 1930s and 1940s. So this research is known, and it's quite old and quite good. So what I was seeing with Anne is that she would expand and contract throughout the years that I worked with her. And it was smaller, but as she got healthier, it grew to be much. She was able to tolerate the expansion and contraction much more than when she first came to see me. And, many times Anne reached out to her cat or to me or to her boyfriend, and she was able to begin expressing the deeper emotions. And this last session felt to me that she was opening up to me more than in any previous session. So the word contact in Latin comes from a word contactus, which means with touch. So, there was a touch that she felt between her and I and between her and her cat. So I have a treat for everybody, putting this all together. My patient Anne made a video, and she wrote and sang a song about her cat, Kevin. So I'm going to ask everybody watching if, as you watch this video that we're going to share, if you have just, what do you see? What emotions do you see in Anne and in Kevin? And what do you hear in their voices? What do you see in their eyes? And maybe if you want, write in the Q&A section, just write your observations down. What do you see? So let's go ahead and show that video.
About my cat, I know. I know! Everybody's gonna make fun of me. But, no, the reason that I wrote this song is because, and something that I don't really tell people is that, I kind of, when I adopted Kevin, I was in a really bad place in my life. And, a few months even after that, I was in an even worse place in my life. And I was very depressed and didn't feel as though anybody would really care if I wasn't around anymore. And anytime I got really sad, and still anytime I get really sad, I think about how if I wasn't around, Kevin would be really sad. And I always think, well, I don't want him to ever have to feel the way that I feel right now. So, he kind of, in a lot of ways, to me, saved my life. And I think people are going to think I'm crazy for saying that, but, animals are really special in that way, I think. Anybody's pets. You would do anything for your pets. You would do anything for your animals. So I think they deserve songs too. Not enough people write songs about their pets, so okay. On my way to ballet, there you are in the window. Yellow eyes take me by surprise. Have to stop to say hello. Little friend, hello. Suddenly you're nudging me with a nice to meet you. Would you mind, should you be so kind? Can I come home with you? How could I have known that such a little thing could have such a big role to play in the play of my life? Jelly bean toes and a cotton candy nose to match your sweet, sweet disposition. Where would I be if you hadn't found me? Maybe here, but surely not the same. All alone, home sweet home, always just the two of us. And despite your hair being everywhere, I think we're doing just fine. A little broke, but just fine. Every day in your way you show me that you love me. And even if they can't understand, I'm just so lucky you're mine. How could I have known that such a little thing could have such a big role to play in the play of my life? Jelly bean toes and a cotton candy nose to match your sweet, sweet disposition. Where would I be if you hadn't found me? Maybe here, but surely not. Jelly bean toes and a cotton candy nose to match your sweet, sweet disposition. Where would I be if you hadn't found me? Maybe here, but surely not the same.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
I had a comment from someone in the audience that sort of summed that up very well. The audience member said, Kevin and Anne were in love with each other. And I think
Absolutely.
that's sweet. We'll come back to other questions later.
Yeah. Yeah, what was clear to me was that Kevin just adored Anne and Anne adored Kevin, and the bond between them, that was energetic, emotional, energetic contact. That was the life-saving connection. So yeah, that's a treat to share that. When I first saw it, I was just so filled with joy that she had that in her life. You know, I wasn't aware of how much joy she had from this little cat. And as we were preparing for today, we learned that Dr. Reich had a dog named Troll, right? And I don't know if we could share that. Yeah. And clearly Dr. Reich and his dog were enjoying that time together. The dog's just getting a nice back scratch, sitting outside in the sun. This is probably back in the 40s, 30s or 40s. Um, and they enjoying their time together.
Before we take questions from our audience, I want to give you, Dr. Marcel, an opportunity. Is there anything you would like to add to your case presentation before we go to questions?
No, I think I've said, enough for right now. I'm really very curious how our audience is reacting to this. I know how I'm reacting to it and how you may be reacting to it. So I'd love to hear what they have to say, questions that they may have, or any comments about the video or about Anne.
Okay, I'll just read off some of them. One
Okay.
person remarked that she could absolutely relate to this brave lady, which is she had energetic, emotional contact with that patient of yours, Anne. A question someone asked, am I bad for feeling that a pet would have the exact opposite effect on me? I feel that it would solidify my sense of loneliness and the sense that no humans find me good enough. People are armored, human relationships are difficult. It feels to me that a pet offers a substitute solution to the human solitude that we feel.
Mm. Well, in part that's true, but I also think pets can be a bridge to find ways to connect with people that are not so armored, that are healthier. I have found pet owners to be some of the more open people. I'll just stop and ask if I can pet someone's dog as they're walking through my neighborhood. And they just start talking. It says talk to me on my forehead, I think. And people just start telling me all about their dog and I feel connected. So I guess I'm not sure if I'm answering the question of our audience, but I wonder, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wondered if that person would like to share in the Q&A section whether they have had a dog or a cat and have experienced having one that they really made emotional, energetic contact with and loved, like Anne loved Kevin. But the other thing that's more general, I think, is that anything that helps us expand emotionally and to pulsate more spontaneously will open up all kinds of opportunities. So we all know that when we feel expansive, we're more likely to talk to other people. We're more likely to reach out and take a chance. We are more confident. Whereas when we get contracted and stuck in contraction, chronically, we withdraw into ourselves and we're less likely to make contact with other people. So I think the person in the audience is absolutely right that in a way it's a substitute because the goal is to relate to other human beings and not just animals. But it's a warm-blooded mammal that you love, and it helps you expand. And I think that helps us expand in our lives in lots of other ways, including with other people. At least that's what I hope is true. There's just
I
something
have a
about
thought in response to that. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
I have if I could respond to that. When we expand, say with a pet or with other people that have pets, I mean, and we know there's armoring and there's unhealthy people out there that would be hard to connect with. Part of it, I think, is perception. I mean, Anne had very clear perception. She could tell when someone was being very open and warm with her or very harsh with her. She was clear in her eyes, so, and being able to perceive. So I think if that's a problem for someone, it might be harder to reach out to another person, and then the pet can become a substitute. But so that idea of perception, we can expand and contract, but we also have to see what effect we're having on our pets or on other people, or that what effect they're having on us. And that is what I think therapy can help people with, is understanding that dynamic in a relationship and within ourselves when we're being hard on ourselves or when we're being shut down and contracted. when actually it might be helpful to expand, but we're so used to shutting down. So Anne had very clear perception. And so I think that might be something to consider, that she could see clearly but her problem was within herself. She was hard on herself because she feared abandonment. So I think everybody's different. So it would depend on the dynamic of each individual.
I know we often heard people say that pets have unconditional excitement and love for the people that live with them and take care of them and feed them and love them back. And I know for myself, when I come home from a long day at work and I'm really tired and maybe even a little contracted myself, my golden doodle Rosie goes absolutely insane when I come home. It's almost a problem, except for that it's so wonderful. She jumps around and wants to, be rubbed all over and runs back and forth across the kitchen. And my wife and kids have to stand in line kind of thing because she's so insistent. But it absolutely brings me out of the work mode and being tired. It energizes me and makes me feel very good. So
That's awesome.
yeah. I have another question. Someone wondered, what if people are allergic to cats and dogs?
Yep. So I myself am allergic to cats, and I love cats, but I can't be around them. So it's disappointing. But other pets, I'll give you an example. Taking care of like fish tank, that's been shown to help people feel better, their moods. Some doctors' offices have fish tanks. Nursing homes will have fish tanks, and it actually calms people down. And the care of the fish. I have patients who've had pet turtles and bunny rabbits, although that you might be allergic to the bunny rabbit, but I mean that's a challenge if you're allergic. That is a challenge, but maybe there are pets you could take care of that don't require you having that allergic response. But I think it's the care of something else that needs us, or that is part of our life. And like a hamster, a pet ham. I know my kids, when they were little, they wanted a pet hamster. So we had a little pet hamster called Cuddly, and he literally would cuddle with us. And, nobody had allergies, but I think it's really about what kind of connection you can make with whatever animal. And another example I can think of is I have a few neighbors in my neighborhood, and I myself have it. We have bird feeders in our backyard. So, and the birds, when I wake up in the morning and I'm opening my back door to go feed them, they're waiting for me, So they're not my pets, but they're animals. And I go out and my neighbors do this too. And there's just something, they chirp and they hang out and they're looking forward to, eating their breakfast, right? So they're not my pets really, but I have this emotional expansion. When I see them, I get happier. That's the first thing I do in the morning, get outside and feed them. So
It's an interesting question. What is a pet? Where do you draw the line? If you have birds waiting for you and excited when you come out to feed them, they're not living with you, but they are interacting with you. And use the word
right.
connection. I've had a couple of patients who had birds, cockatiels or parrots, and they interact with you and talk to you sometimes in their own way. They communicate with you, and it's not quite the same. Maybe there's something about being a mammal, interacting with other mammals. A topic for another day, but I think there are a lot of different animals that people can have emotional, energetic contact with that aren't just dogs or cats that they might be allergic to.
Sure.
So,
Good question. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Another question, someone asked, can you comment on the slideshow of the animals and people at the open of this seminar?
Oh, that's easy. Um, some of them were, I asked colleagues that were part of this webinar and part of the American College of Ergonomy if they had any pets that they wanted to share for the opening slide. I thought that would be a nice thing. So that's some of their family's pets.
Mm.
And my own dog was there. Your dogs were there. um, so I don't know. I was struck by how many of us have pets, and it's a topic I don't think anybody's really looked at it like this, like that energetic contact. But it's, we have that. We all have that. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that answers the question.
I I remember when I went through all my photographs to pick out some of my pets, it reminded me of when you do the same thing for your children, when you're showing people your children, the same sense of love and pride. And here's my dog.
Mhm.
I'm glad we did that.
Yep. Yep.
Um, another question. People are either introverted or extroverted, it seems. It seems introverted patients who have trouble connecting to other people connect really well with pets. Any thoughts?
For sure. Yeah. Um, like walking in my neighborhood, I can tell who's more introverted and who's more extroverted because if when I would be walking my dog, some would come right up to me and some they're very introverted. So that affects the dynamic of the emotional energetic contact for sure. But again, to know if you're introverted or extroverted and know what you need to work on to help with, and I think pets can help with that. For example, with children with autism, some of them they don't read social cues well, and they're very introverted. But when a pet's in their environment, they relax. Um, I can tell you a little vignette. I was at the Denver, Colorado airport not too long ago, traveling through Denver, and we were delayed because of the bad weather that was coming through the country. So we're at the gate, and there's dozens and dozens of people waiting, grumpy people, introverted people, extroverted people, people mouthing off, kids being fussy and mommy this and mommy that. And the tension was going up at the gate, as they were saying, oh, we're delayed another half hour, another hour, whatever. So um, at one point, I guess maybe an hour and a half into this woman walks up to our group with this therapy dog named Chloe. So, um, and the immediate effect it had on the introverts, the extroverts. It was a Labrador dog, and she was just in love with everybody. And the kids just stopped fussing and ran over and were scratching the dog's belly. And the grumpy people that were sitting there, like, I want to get on my plane, they all started smiling and laughing. You could just feel the tension in the room or the gate just totally change. And this dog loved doing this. You could tell, like, she was wagging her tail, and she laid down in the middle of the gate. She just laid down and let the kids rub her belly and lick them, and it was like that. Like, no, I don't think any other being except a dog like Chloe could have done that. And the extroverts who were getting irritated and mouthing off and grumbling, they changed. And the introverts who were sitting there quietly, they all, like, they got pleasant and like, okay, there's a bigger picture here. There's this sweet animal that loves us. And again, it was that emotional energetic contact. It happened in a second. People saw the dog, Chloe's wagging her tail, and it just changed. So,
I
but
had
that
a
was a great.
similar experience, not quite about extroverts and introverts, but very sadly, several years ago, there was a suicide at the private school that I worked with, and the whole community was traumatized by this. It was just awful. And we brought in therapy dogs and had them in the library. And I think there were maybe 6 or 7 therapy dogs in there, and the kids just flocked to them. It was such a comfort and such a helpful thing for them. And when I thought about it, every kid in there, every student in there was at a different stage of grief or a different emotional reaction to what had happened, knew the victim or not, but they could get what they needed from the dog without talking. The dog was just there unconditionally. If they needed to sit quietly and alone and cry, the dog was fine. If they wanted to laugh and get their mind onto other things, the dog was willing to play and do that. So the dog, they were experts reading and making emotional, energetic contact, if you want to say it that way, with the person. It was so impressive, very impressive, and really helpful to the students. A couple more questions. Someone wrote in response to the question about allergies. I think there's a hairless cat, maybe wouldn't be allergic. Also said, I loved the video. As soon as it began, I was very moved. Thank you for it. I was struck by how when Anne spoke, she talked about sadness and emotional difficulty, but seemed to have a smile on her face, wanting and trying to come through.
Yep, that's Anne. That's very much who she is. So I believe we've never really talked about this, but I believe that she's able to use that when in her acting career. She can know what sadness feels like or what being open and happy feels like, and extroverted versus introverted. And she's able to do that in her. I've never seen her on stage productions, but I imagine that's helpful to her. And yeah, I think that's a good observation. She did speak about sadness, but she had a smile. So and she's aware of that. And I think that's the key. If someone's in therapy, is they can learn what they feel and how they're coping with it. Whether it's putting a smile on, even though you're sad, that's a way of coping. It's not wrong. It's just a way of coping. And Anne did that well. And yet she could drop down her guard and reveal the deeper feelings that she was having. So, it's a dynamic process. So, but that's a good observation. Yeah.
Another question. I tend to feel that being around pets and animals in general helps remind me to identify with who I am energetically, the soul, the deeper being, instead of with who I think I am, which is what I feel plagues me most of the time in society, and which society reinforces. The thought-based experience of self.
Wow. Well said.
There's a
Sure.
lot that that's true though. Your dog crawls up in your lap, you kind of melt into that unconditional contact and love, and you feel safe to be who you are. And the kindness in you that you might hold back comes out in that relationship with the dog. You
Yeah.
can be who you really want to
Sure.
be. Let's see if we have another question here. Oh, this is a important one, not a happy question, but a really important question. What about when a pet is sick or dies, like Anne's cat Kevin? How do you get over that?
Yeah. Well, it's a grieving process. The loss and the absence of our pets. And I've been through it a number of times with some pets that I've had over my life. You cry a lot. There's daily reminders of them being around, and then they're not around anymore. So, there's a sadness. I think it's to give yourself, as they say, give yourself grace, give yourself time, and to seek out and talk about it. With a family member, a friend, a therapist, just someone, a doctor. I mean, just somebody that could listen and hear what you have to say. But it can take a while. I mean, I think everybody's different. I mean, I still have pangs about my first dog that I had when I was 13 years old. It's, the memory. But someone gave me a plaque once that said, "Heaven is when you get to see all the dogs you've ever loved." So, there's something about that. The effect that my dogs had on me was very positive, and I still carry them in my heart. So I think that memory is vital. But then I can go on and maybe love another animal and share that. But it's hard. I mean, I don't think it's easy by any means. And Anne has been very sad over the loss of Kevin, but she also has other contact, and and connections that do keep her supported. But the grieving process does take time.
Yeah, I mentioned finding the photos. It's like looking for pictures of your children. Well, dealing with the loss of your loved pet is a little bit like losing a child. Not as severe, I'm sure, but I always said to my own children, you can't have a dog, you can't have a cat unless you're willing to say goodbye to them someday, because they hopefully are going to go before we do. And we've had a couple of a dog and a cat that passed, and it was just sad. We all saw them out and cried and wandered around the house sulking for a day or two. But you also reach out to
Yeah.
your friends, other people that love their dogs the way you love them, and like Dr. Marcel sent us a set of coffee cups with our golden doodle on it, which we love so much. And I think we sent you one of your dog
Yes, you did.
so you find people to support you. And but I guess I will speak personally. I would much rather experience the warmth and the love and the joy and the expansion of having an animal than to never know that in order to avoid being sad. So that's just part of life, I
Yeah.
think.
Well said. Well said. Yeah.
Someone's made a comment, nothing beats the human animal bond. Very true. Very true. I think that's all our questions that we have at this point. Dr. Marcel, I just want to tell you personally, but for our audience as well, I think this has been wonderful, an eye-opening and also a heart-opening presentation for me. Thank you for your time and all the work I know you put into it and the experience that you shared with everyone here today. So thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to leave with the audience as we end up?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Apple, for this discussion. I very much enjoyed doing that, though sometimes it was kind of painful because my dog died recently, and maybe that's why I needed to do this, because I knew how important she was to me. But the effect that these special animals can have on us, like if we suffer from a medical condition or psychiatric condition, including suicidal thinking, it's deeply moving. And my patient Anne needed to be less hard on herself, and she was able to do that in our work together and the emotional contact that we had and the contact she had with her cat Kevin. And what I've observed over and over since I've decided to investigate and share this topic, when I listen to my patients and I ask them about pets, their eyes brighten up, they open up, they expand, they smile, they leave behind the pain that their depression and anxiety and suicidal thinking. So I guess what I want to leave everybody with is that that kind of connection, that kind of contact is a life-saving connection. So, and that was very true for Anne and probably for most of us listening to this. So, and I also want to thank you for what you've done and being part of this conversation, and also the team that helped us produce this. So thank you.
So in wrapping up, first I want to thank our audience for taking some of their time today and being here with us on a Saturday morning. I appreciate that, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did giving it. And I have a special thank you to the donors to the ACO whose support makes this work possible. I hope you'll check out the Journal of Origami on Substack, and I hope you'll join us for our next webinar. To find out more, please visit www.origami.org, where you can find out about various events and activities at the American College of Origami. Thank you, and see you next time.
How do you feel after listening to this presentation and Anne's story? How do you feel after listening to Anne's song? What do you think? If you'd like to learn more about the concept of emotional energetic contact, consider listening to Dr. Chavis's presentation, Emotional Energetic Contact, Essential for Effective Treatment, The link is in the show notes below. The best way to help the ACO spread its knowledge is by letting others know about us. I hope you share this podcast with your friends and family and let them know about our work. You can connect with us at orgonomy.org. I'm Dr. Chris Burritt. Thank you for listening to the Different Kind of Psychiatry podcast, brought to you by the ACO. Since 1968, the psychiatrists affiliated with the American College of Ergonomy have been helping patients discover greater satisfaction, health, and overall well-being in their lives. Whether patients suffer with mental illness, struggle with addiction, or feel unsatisfied with their work lives or relationships, medical orgone therapy, as practiced by the physicians at the ACO, offers a way forward, often without the use of medication.